Sam Altman specifically, who is he? What's his background? How does this guy who nobody's heard of become the CEO of a company which today is, it's almost more valuable than any company in Europe, for instance?
Yeah. Altman he's spent his entire career in Silicon Valley. He was at first a startup founder himself, and he was part of the first batch of companies that joined Y Combinator, today one of the most prestigious startup accelerators in Silicon Valley. But at the time, he was the very first class, and no one really knew what YC was. He did that for 7 years. He was running a company called Looped, which was a mobile-based social media platform, effectively a Foursquare competitor, but which actually started earlier than Foursquare. It didn't do very well. It was sold off for parts. But what he did do very well during that time was ingratiate himself with very powerful networks in Silicon Valley. So one of the first and longest mentors that he ended up having throughout his career is Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, who then plucked Sam Altman to be his successor. And Sam Altman then, at a very young age, became president of YC. And then he ended up doing that for around 5 years. And during his tenure at YC, he dramatically expanded YC's portfolio of companies. He started investing not just in software companies, but also pushing into quantum, into self-driving cars, into fusion, and really going for those hard tech engineering challenges. And if you look at how he ended up then as a CEO of OpenAI, I think that he basically was trying to figure out what is going to be the next big technology wave. Let me test out all of these different things, position myself as involved in all of these different things. So in addition to all his investments, he started cultivating this idea of AI also seems like maybe it'll be big. Let me start working on an idea for a fundamental AI research lab that becomes OpenAI. And once OpenAI started being the fastest one taking off, then Altman hops over and becomes CEO.
He hops over. So how does that happen? Where does he come from? Because like you say, originally it's got people like, he's there. Who's there first, him or Ilya Sutskever?
Technically, Altman recruited Sutskever, right, but Altman was only a chairman. He didn't take an executive role at OpenAI, even though he founded the company. Right. And similarly with Musk, Musk didn't have an executive role. He was just a co-chairman. So it was just the two of them that were chairman of the board. And Ilya Sutskever and Greg Machman were the main people, the main executives that were actually running the company day to day in the beginning.
I mean, I have to say, reading the book, Sam Altman, he comes across as a master manipulator, like masterful manipulator and understander of human psychology. There's this great quote, let me get it up, which you have, I think it's from Paul Graham. Sam Altman has it. You could parachute him into an island full of cannibals and come back in 5 years and he'd be the king. If you're Sam Altman, you don't have to be profitable to convey to investors that you'll succeed with or without them. I mean, he just sounds like he's also described, by the way, as a once-in-a-generation fundraising talent. I think that's by you.
Yeah.
How is he able to just basically come out of nowhere and compete with people like Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, as this kind of intellectual heavyweight in Silicon Valley in regards to one of the major growth technologies of our decade?
So from the public's perspective, he came out of nowhere, but within the tech industry, everyone knew Sam Altman. You know, like I as someone who worked in tech, like I knew Sam Altman ages ago because Y Combinator was just so important. It was
as a CEO of a potential company that valuable, was it always something that he might be in?
No, I don't think people ever thought that he would jump to become the CEO of a company because he has such an investor mindset, and his approach has always been to be involved in many, many companies. I mean, he invested in hundreds of startups as both the president of YC and running some personal investment funds as well. But he was well respected within the Valley. He was seen as a critical linchpin of the entire startup ecosystem, and not just by people within the industry, but by policymakers, which is key. He started cultivating relationships with politicians very, very early on in his tenure as the president of YC. And for example, I talk in my book about how Ash Carter, the head of the Department of Defense under the Obama administration, came to Altman asking, how can we get more young tech entrepreneurs to partner with the US government? So he was seen as a gateway into the Valley. And obviously, the Valley isn't just made of startups. There's also the tech giants. But back then, like, starting a startup was way cooler than working at a tech giant, because Google, Microsoft, they were considered the older, safer options if you really wanted job security. But if you wanted to be an innovator, if you wanted to do breathtaking things, you would build a startup. And then your number one goal as a startup founder was to get into YC. So Altman was the pinnacle. He was emblematic of the pinnacle of success in the Valley.
And he, even if his net worth wasn't the same as other people in terms of his social capital, his networking, he understood early on that's where the real value lies.
Exactly.
So interesting. I mean, some notes that I wrote down, because there are points where I'm thinking, why on earth is this gentleman the CEO of such a valuable company? He seems kind of useless. And the notes I had down were people pleaser.
Yes.
Liar. Conflict averse. How'd you become the CEO of such a successful company? Maybe you think that or don't think that. I don't know. I mean, at points it comes across as almost psychotic, the capacity to lie. Here's an interesting question for me, and I don't know how comfortable you are with answering it. In writing this book, there's another alternative timeline where you basically write a hagiography of Sam Altman. And you leave all of that out, right? There are other writers out there, I won't name them. They sell a ton of books and they write very positive, affirming biographies of these visionary leaders, whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, etc. Why didn't you just write that book about Sam Altman? You know, you would have made a ton more money. Right? But I'm reading this stuff and I'm thinking, my goodness, and it's so deft and nuanced, your portrait of Sam Altman. I just think the guy, I mean, this is going to really hurt him when he reads this stuff, I imagine. Why didn't you do that? Take the easy route.
I don't know that would have been the easy route. I mean, I just wrote the facts and the facts come out that way. You know, like I interviewed over 260 people across 300 different interviews, and over 150 of those interviews were with people who either worked at the company or were close to Sam Altman. And that's just what they presented, was all of the details that I ended up putting in. And one of the things that just came through again and again and again, well, two things that came through again and again. No matter how long someone worked with him or how closely they worked with him, they would always say to me, at the end of the day, I don't know what Sam believes. So that's interesting. And then the other thing that came through was I would ask them, well, what did he say to you he believed in this meeting at this point in time for why the company needs to do this XYZ thing? And the answer was he always said he believed what that person believed. Except because I interviewed so many people who have very divergent beliefs, then I was like, wait a minute, he's saying that he believes what this person believes and then what that person believes, and they're literally diametrically opposite. So yeah, so I just ended up documenting all of those different details to illustrate how people feel about him. I mean, he's a polarizing figure, both extreme in the positive and negative direction. Some people feel he is the greatest tech leader of our generation, and they don't say that he is honest when they say that. They just say that he's one of the most phenomenal assets for achieving a vision of the future that they really agree with. And then there are other people who hate his guts and say that he's the greatest threat ever. And it really also comes down to whether or not they agree with his vision, and they don't. And so then his persuasive powers suddenly become manipulative tactics.
I mean, if you compare him to somebody like Elon Musk as a CEO, who is obviously far from perfect, but Elon Musk makes big bets. He has gut instincts. He's very happy to alienate people if he thinks he's right about something. And, you know, obviously I don't agree with him on many, many things, but that's quite a sort of, there's an archetype with regards to a business leader that looks like that. And then you got somebody like Sam Altman. He's doing all of these things, like I say, the people pleasing, the conflict aversion. and yet he's managed to lead this company to essentially a third of $1 trillion valuation.
Mm-hmm.
He must obviously be doing something right as well. So what are his sort of comparative advantages as a business leader? Because on paper, I read all that stuff, and I think the guy wouldn't be able to get up in the morning and make breakfast, and yet he's accomplished some extraordinary things.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to he does understand human psychology very well, which not only is helpful in getting people to join in on his quest. So he's great at acquiring talent, and then he's said himself, like, I'm a visionary leader, I'm not an operational leader, and my best skill is to acquire the best people that then operationalize the thing. So he's good at persuading people into joining his quest. He's good at persuading whoever has access to whatever resource he needs to then give him that resource, whether it's capital, land, energy, water, laws, and then people have said that he instills a very powerful sense of belief in his vision and in their ability to then do it.
So he's good. We say in English soccer, we would say good man manager. He can inspire people.
He inspires people to do things that they didn't think that they would be able to do. Yeah. But I mean, this is why there's so much controversy. He is such a polarizing figure because people who everyone has a very personalized encounter relationship with him because he often he does his best work in one-on-one meetings when he can say whatever he needs to say to get you to do, believe, achieve whatever it is that he needs you to do. And that's also part of the reason why there's so many diverging, like, people then are like, oh, I think he believes this, I think he believes that, and they're like totally divergent. It's because he's having these very personalized conversations with people. And so some people end up coming out of those personalized meetings feeling totally transformed in the positive direction, being like, I feel superhuman, I can now do all these things, and it's in the direction that I want to go. I'm building the future that he sees and I see, and we're like aligned. And then other people end up coming out of these meetings feeling like, was I played? Like, was he just telling me all these things